Hi, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the virtual summit so far, and welcome to the Goguen session on tokens, DApps, and more. I'm Nebojsa Vojvodic, and I'm a product manager at Input Output, working with our research and development teams and helping them define the requirements for turning Cardano into a development platform built on smart contracts. And I'll be talking to you about issuing custom token and developing decentralized applications on a Cardano multi-asset ledger. So let's get started. So I've based this talk around a few main talking points where I'm trying to explain what Goguen is, who we are building it for, who'll be able to use it, what people will be able to do once we deliver the features that are planned within the Goguen development team, and how we are approaching the release for that, at which point, at which stage in this release schedule you can get involved, and how. So let me say a few words about Goguen itself and how it fits within the overall Cardano roadmap. So as you may know already, Cardano is split into the five main development themes, starting with Byron and building up to Voltaire. With Byron, we've laid the foundation with our Ouroboros proof of stake consensus protocol, which allowed us then to build a community and allowed people to buy and sell ADA on the Cardano network and use wallets like Daedalus and Yoroi. With Shelley, which we are just rolling out as we speak, we've added extended the decentralization of the previously federated Cardano network, which then allows community to start taking over the operation of the network and participating in rewards and incentives built around that. Then we have Goguen, which is going to be the central theme of this talk, in which we are adding functionality like issuing custom tokens on Cardano and building smart contracts on top of the Cardano blockchain. And that kind of sets up additional enablers for moving on to making Cardano a more interoperable, scalable platform, which we are going to explore further in the Pasha development theme, and then giving the community the tools to govern the further evolution of the platform in Voltaire by allowing it to become a more self-sustaining system and building in tools like voting and treasury system. So, and one note as well, like, who is Goguen? Why did we name this team after him? So Joseph Goguen was a computer scientist who studied philosophy of computation and information, as Wikipedia article says, and he was also quite involved in formal method and theorem proving, which are tools that we are extensively using in building Cardano as an overall platform. And he also originated and helped develop the OBJ family of programming languages, and we've had some involvement with runtime verification, and one of the lead developers there, the Grigori, and researchers, Grigori Rosso, used to work with Joseph Goguen. Okay, moving on. So what is Goguen for? So it's a key building block in building a global social and financial operating system. And that means we want it to be really a versatile platform that you can use to build solutions around application domains like supply chain, check and trace, medical records, identity, voting, managing census, for example, property registration, voucher systems, and then a lot of different applications within peer-to-peer and traditional finance, payment systems, and much more. Since it's we are building it as a service platform. In order for it to be successful as a service platform, we need to think of the utility and experience for the end users. So it needs to be useful, and it needs to be easy to use for those users, whether they be local communities, established businesses and startups, or local and national governments. All of them should be able to use that platform for a number of business and application domains. So how are we planning to deliver this? It's a very ambitious goal, and it's a very complex system that we are hoping to build, and it's ecosystem of interacting components, and so we are not building it in isolation. We want also that it integrates seamlessly with the existing applications and infrastructure, whether they are off-chain systems or with other blockchain solution providers out there. And we don't want to lock people into our ecosystem. We want actually all of the building blocks of that system to be mutually interchangeable, where you can pick and match components of the system to build the end service that you actually want. We want to provide all the tools for that. And since it's a complex ecosystem, it's something that is an effort where we will need a lot of external help as well. So that kind of brings us to the topics of who is Goguen for. Initially, so not it's for all of the end users that I mentioned before, communities, businesses, local and regional governments, and so on. But in the first instance, we are building a platform for developers who are, as mentioned, a key, let's say, partner for us in building that ecosystem of interworking services on top of Cardano as an underlying trust layer. So when we say developers, that's a very broad term. Which developers do we specifically have in mind here? So Joe Lubin was from the founder of Consensus, was also asked once, and he wrote an article trying to define, to answer a question of who is an Ethereum developer. And lots of what he said about the Ethereum development system ecosystem is valid also for the ecosystem that we hope to build on Cardano. So we are anybody who wants to develop applications on Cardano. Those could be application developers, so mobile, web, and desktop developers that are building front ends and applications that integrate with Cardano or Cardano blockchain, which is providing the trusted layer for their applications or payment backend, and also that want to integrate with Cardano wallets. They want to integrate Cardano wallets into their applications. It's also for blockchain protocol developers for other from other platforms that are designing, let's say, execution environments or solutions for cross-chain interoperability. Then it's could be also for embedded developers that want to set up stake pools on embedded devices like Raspberry Pi, for example. And yeah, that's one of the advantages of Cardano, because it doesn't require extensive resources. You can actually run stake pools on embedded hardware. So apart from that, we are also targeting developers in finance and smart contracts developers that have some experience with smart contracts and blockchain development, as well as researchers and students that are interested in the technology stack that we are building. Okay, so that is a very broad, let's say, spectrum of developers that we are targeting. So we have to start somewhere, and we want to start with Haskell developers, skilled Haskell developers that will help us build really great, superior developer experience, which will allow then application developers coming on board at a later stage to build great products by using those tools and the infrastructure that we've prepared for them. So if the developer experience is great, then we can really use it to generate early adoption, and that would then pave the way for growing the developer community on Cardano. So how do we want to then move beyond that initial stage where we are building all the tools and infrastructure for to make it easy for developers to write applications for Cardano? We will, beyond that, also use that platform as a stepping stone to enable a number of domain-specific languages which simplify the entry for developers into the smart contracts and blockchain software development, because they can then use the expertise from any application or business domain, like let's say insurance or finance or supply chain, or actually from the legal sector. We could bring experts that and tailor the domain-specific language that is customized to describe problems that they want to solve in their business sector. So without them requiring extensive software development or blockchain and smart contracts background. And on top of that, the second point, we want to also explore building alternative development environments for general purpose programming languages that would then go beyond Haskell, where we could leverage the experience that other developers bring with them, who are, let's say, more familiar with the languages like Java or JavaScript or Python, and that are more well versed in this imperative programming languages paradigm rather than the functional one that comes with Haskell. So we are. That does not mean actually that there's nothing that you can do before we deliver the Plutus platform, before we extend Cardano to be a programmable platform for smart contracts. You can already do a number of things with Cardano right now, and especially once Shelley is rolled out. You can already write code that submits transactions to the Cardano blockchain that queries wallet and ledger state. You can monitor the health of the Cardano network, and you can attach metadata to transactions from your applications, and then use your applications to inspect that metadata and make decisions based on its content at a later point of time. So what can you do with that functionality? You can already build quite cool applications with that. You can build web and mobile frontends that integrate with Cardano, for example, for as a payment backend, and you could also integrate with the Cardano wallets. You can build any type of applications that transact with the Cardano blockchain. For example, like in-app or in-game payments. This is already possible right now. So what does Goguen then deliver on top of that? So there are two main things that you get with Goguen. First is the Multiasset Ledger, and we'll talk in a bit more detail about that in the next slides. And applications. And applications, here we have the Plutus applications and Marlowe contracts, and it will become more clear what distinctions between these two are. Okay, moving on. So multi-asset ledger. So multi-asset ledger is actually the ability brings with itself the ability to define, forge, and transfer your own custom tokens on Cardano, just as you would ADA. And then to manipulate those tokens, transfer, view them, view the balance in any of these tokens from your Cardano wallet, and check and inspect transactions in any currency issued on the Cardano network from the Cardano Explorer. And we will also provide an easy graphical user interface for issuing these custom-defined user assets on Cardano with just a few clicks. So coming back to the first point, defining, forging, and transferring your own tokens on Cardano, just as you would ADA, what does that actually mean? So other platforms like Ethereum or EOS that allow forging and transfer of user-issued assets on their blockchains, they rely on creating parallel mechanisms to the underlying ledger to handle transfers and balances of what on their platforms are non-native tokens. So, for example, like to transfer DAI on Ethereum, you need to invoke a corresponding smart contract, and that implies execution fees for running the contract every time you do a transaction that involves it. And that contract then also needs to maintain all the balances for all the account balances in DAI on top of the Ethereum blockchain. And the difference is that on Cardano, all user-issued assets use the Cardano ledger for these basic operations in the same way that ADA uses them. So the same way you transfer ADA, you would transfer any user-issued token on Cardano. And that does not require you to run a smart contract to do the transfers or to maintain those balances. And so not only that there are no cost or performance penalties for handling custom tokens, but you also inherit the security model of the underlying Cardano blockchain when you do that, and we've actually made sure that the security is one of the advantages that we feel that we have compared to other existing solutions out there. And if you define your own tokens, you inherit that same security that is built in for ADA. And for example, if you want to list the custom user-issued tokens on Cardano on exchanges that are already listing ADA, ideally there should be no additional overhead for making that possible. So, for multi-asset ledger, what are the kind of things that you could do with that? So even before we add the smart contracts functionality to Cardano, you can already do quite a few things, but just by using this native multi-asset ledger on Cardano, you could do simple utility tokens and branding currencies such as those used in gaming, and simple things like loyalty and reward programs. Then once we start adding smart contracts functionality, then you could do more stuff like payment channels, collectibles, wrapped tokens, and then we can also manage like auctions and crowdfunding type of events and tokens with on top of the multi-asset ledger. So moving on to Plutus applications. So Plutus applications will be built on top of the Plutus, what we call the Plutus platform. And Plutus is basically Haskell. So Plutus allows you to write Plutus applications in Haskell, and then compiling them to Plutus core, which then in turn allows you to execute those applications on chain. So and the Haskell basically allows you to write more secure, concise, and reusable code. And because it's more concise, it's also more readable. and it allows you to reason much better about the security and other properties of that code, and that allows you to build better developer tools. We could, for example, integrate formal methods into the full smart contracts development stack, so we could automate things that are done manually today, for example, like code audits for decentralized applications. We could automate quite a great deal of that by applying, for example, formal verification to smart contracts. And that's made possible by the choice of Haskell as the programming language for Plutus applications. And that's also, as mentioned earlier, a key tool to engage the developer community to help us build Cardano into a versatile platform and service platform and application ecosystem, which then also makes Cardano pluggable into the existing applications and infrastructure. As mentioned, we definitely need help from a wider developer community to achieve those goals. How are we going to deliver this functionality? We've decided to split this release into two main phases. One is the Plutus Foundation, and another one is called the Plutus Application Framework. So Plutus Foundation basically enables smart contracts on Cardano, and the focus on the Plutus Application Framework is on continuously improving the developer experience. So with Plutus Foundation, we want to give the developers an opportunity to engage with us as early as possible. That means as soon as we have as soon as it's possible to code smart contracts on Cardano. And we are preparing early documentation, example use cases, and we are building and we are partnering to build applications on top of Plutus when Plutus Foundation is out, and developers will be able to access and inspect those as guidance to developing their own applications. With Plutus Application Framework, this is the next stage that builds on Plutus Foundation, because with Plutus Foundation, we are delivering actually the critical on-chain infrastructure, and that needs to be done very carefully. It's not something that we deliver like a buggy solution initially and then work to fix the bugs through updates. This is a very rigorous approach where we are applying formal methods and verification to delivering that. And once we have that behind us, and once we have the Plutus Foundation running in the Cardano mainnet, that actually allows us to employ a very agile approach and continuously and like in short releases iterate and improve all the off-chain infrastructure and SDKs into a powerful and easy to use application framework, and by doing that, make it very easy to developers to tackle very complex business and problems and solve them by writing appropriate Plutus applications on top of that very easily, and let's say with well-functioning and efficient developer tools. Okay, moving on. So Plutus Foundation, what do you actually get with Plutus Foundation? So it builds on, with Shelley, actually you already have multisig, so like basic scripting functionality is available there. And with Plutus Foundation, we are extending that by adding a general purpose programming language for smart contracts, so that you can then use to tackle a number of other possible business and application domains. So we will, on top of that, develop essential developer tools for customizing transaction validation on Cardano, which not only allows you to deploy Plutus code and operate it in the Cardano network, but it also allows interaction with our wallet and ledger functionality. So interaction with like the wallet backend and the Cardano node. And as mentioned, we will be this kind of sets a milestone after which we can do really rapid iteration of the off-chain infrastructure that kind of rounds up the whole offer around the Plutus smart contracts platform. So what can you build with Plutus Foundation? So basically, there's no limitations what you can build with Plutus Foundation. You can build any type of applications with that, as it's a general purpose programming language. But it's tailored more and suitable more for early adopters and innovators in the developer community, because it requires developers to design application control flows themselves, and also to take care of the user interaction layer, so to building the front ends that allow end users to interact with their applications. There is still some burden that is on the application developers themselves to build an end-to-end functioning application for Cardano. It can be done, but at this stage, it will require a bit more deep digging to provide this type of end-to-end solutions. It makes more sense to tackle simpler solutions initially. And here are some examples, like an escrow-based decentralized exchange where you lock some ADA into an escrow contract, for example, and then release those funds once the user deposits, let's say, another custom token that's been issued on Cardano with an equivalent amount to the ADA that's been locked into that, which is kind of like a very simple decentralized exchange functionality. Then you can build on what's delivered already, what will have been delivered already with Multiasset Ledger, by adding some additional functionality, let's say to issuing tokens, by adding vesting periods. Then we'll be able to support payment channels. We could even build more complex applications like centralized stablecoins, which are then backed up, let's say, by a centralized fiat reserves, and then where issuing a new coins is kind of managed by a central authority manually. And it could also enable track and trace functionality, so to track provenance of products traversing the supply chain, for example. Then moving on to Plutus Application Framework. With Plutus Application Framework, we will get the infrastructure that will include design patterns for writing, let's say, standardized decentralized applications on Cardano, and it will also simplify how you interact with the wallet and the Cardano ledger from your applications. And that will be, let's say, an application framework that will also make it easier to design kind of like a standardized generic user interaction layer in your application front end that can also then be integrated within existing Cardano wallets. And all of this will allow developers to focus more on your specific business logic, rather than like in the Plutus Foundation phase, where developers had to also worry about the application control flows, the interaction with the node and the wallet, and user interaction layers. So what kind of use cases can you then tackle once you have all of these tools at your disposal? So basically then it's really making it possible for developers to tackle the use cases of any complexity with the full knowledge that they can rely on the basic application framework functionality of the underlying Plutus application framework to handle all of the aspects that were mentioned in the previous slide, and then really focus on delivering the best possible user experience for their specific application domain. And those could be, for example, a number of applications in decentralized finance, like lending, microfinance, stablecoins, and then crypto derivatives, for example, that track the price of the real world underlying assets and securities. And then we could also move into the world of regulated assets with for example, tokenized security tokens, and asset tokenization types of use cases. And we are already looking into applications, for example, like decentralized identity and voting as part of the Cardano platform. So how can we make it even better? We will continue to add functionality to the whole application framework, and we will continue to add infrastructure and layer 2 solutions that will standardize functionality that might be useful for application developers to use within their applications. And that includes, for example, oracles, decentralized identities, managing regulated assets like security tokens from within your applications. So we want to provide libraries that make it easy for users to do that, so that they don't need to reinvent that with every application. And on top of that, we are also exploring how we could make it easier for application developers to publish and distribute their decentralized applications, and provide application updates to their users in a more standardized and let's say more flexible, more efficient way. So we are looking into something like an application distribution platform, or some sort of an application store for decentralized applications. So we are already thinking about how we want to onboard developers to start using Plutus Foundation as soon as it is out, and then how we can use that as a springboard to moving on to more, let's say, a more enjoyable developer experience with the Plutus application framework. So we're working with the Cardano Foundation and with Emurgo on a strategy around developer events. So this is, we are going to look out for updates because we might announce some of these events later this year. And we will provide also regular, probably monthly developer updates to the whole developer community. So moving on from the Plutus. So Plutus can be used as a platform for domain-specific languages, because Haskell is a language that is widely used for developing compilers for domain-specific languages. And domain-specific languages are, as we discussed a bit earlier, make it easier for they're much the learning curve is much less steep than for a language, a general purpose language like Haskell. So developers can learn that in a much shorter time, and if they are coming from a specific business background, they can actually use their expertise, because domain-specific language will have been designed to address those needs specifically, so that they would kind of inherently understand the logic behind that language much more intuitively. So why is that important? Because we already are thinking about, not thinking about the development on that front is actually very advanced already. We are working on a smart contracts domain-specific language for traditional finance. So this, and why have we decided to do that? Because it's actually widely, there are a number of problems with traditional financial contracts that have been widely understood and researched already. And there is a number of use cases for smart contracts that address a large number of these problems that are prevalent in traditional finance and that help overcome these problems. So, for example, some of those problems are that a lot of the processes in traditional finance are still manual and or are using out of date or inefficient infrastructure, IT infrastructure for that, which leads to settlement delays, makes them vulnerable to fraud, causes cost overheads, and also because of the centralized architecture of the traditional IT infrastructure for finance, they have single points of failure built into their system, which have already caused quite big financial losses when some of these points in the traditional IT infrastructure fail, which has been known to happen already. And then how smart contracts can be used, that there is quite a bit of research that shows that it can be applied, for example, even to initial public offerings, managing private equities, then for all types of loans, syndicated leverage, for example, for mortgage loans. We could even build automated stock exchange markets with smart contracts. In theory, we can use it for invoicing and payments and monitoring, let's say, supply chain. And there's a number of other use cases which have been widely researched and speculated upon. So why hasn't there been already? Why there haven't been already solutions that address this? Well, because there's blockchain and smart contracts are still kind of an emerging technology, and it's constantly changing, and it poses big challenges and a steep learning curve to adopt that technology in the traditional finance, where people don't necessarily have that background. And so how do we want to address that? With Marlowe. And Marlowe is an easy-to-use and optimized for finance smart contracts development platform. And it offers a fast track for financial service providers to build expertise in smart contracts and blockchain technology, because it is a simple domain-specific language that can be learned fairly quickly. And another reason why we are working on Marlowe is because it's a prototype for other types of domain-specific languages. For example, you could imagine a domain-specific language for supply chain in the legal sector, or for building, let's say, insurance type of applications. Okay. So what can Marlowe contracts then be used for? So it could target existing smart contract developers, for example, especially in the decentralized finance, because some of the products in decentralized finance mimic traditional financial instruments. But it's also aimed at financial experts and financial engineers and fintech developers, which don't necessarily have background in smart contracts and blockchain technology. Then Marlowe contracts. With Marlowe contracts, you will actually get a number of tools an online development environment, which is the Marlowe Playground, and I encourage you to search for that and play around with it. So it's basically a web development environment which you can start to use instantly without having to set up anything on any local development environment on your local machine. So it's can be accessed and used instantly to experiment with and learn programming in Marlowe. And it also provides visual programming tools. We are using Blockly for that. So that allows you basically to build traditional financial products like zero coupon bonds or mortgage contracts out of the existing visual building blocks. So you can basically build a contract like you would by using Lego blocks. Then we provide also reference implementation of standard financial instruments and the library of financial contract templates with local regulations. And we're partnering with Actos Foundation, and I'll talk a bit about that in the next slide as well. Because Marlowe is a simple domain-specific language with a very simple and easily readable syntax, it makes it even easier than Plutus to reason about some properties of applications or smart contracts written in Marlowe. So it's possible to do already with the tools that we have today and that are available already with the Marlowe Playground. You could perform a static analysis of all possible scenarios of a contract written in Marlowe and all the scenarios that it might go through that can expose any failure in the contract execution. And you can do that before it's ever run on a blockchain to uncover any conditions that could lead to, for example, failed payments out of a contract or any other conditions that could lead to the contract to fail to perform as intended. Okay, next. So I said I would say a couple of words about Actos. So we are providing some, let's say, reference implementation of standard financial instruments. And we are partnering with Actos on that, and Actos is a foundation, and it's a set of standardized contract types for financial services. So Actos Foundation have tried to define the most widely used financial products and in a way that is a machine-readable algorithmic representation of all of these widely used legal agreements. So we are building some reference implementations for that and for developers to be able to consult and customize to their needs. And that would then be able to perform within any and interoperate with any systems that are observing that standard as well. So on top of that, we are also looking into applications of Marlowe beyond traditional finance, but more like in decentralized finance, where to enable more peer-to-peer financial products. And also to provide kind of an onboarding path for traditional finance services. So even if they don't want to immediately move from the traditional financial infrastructure to a more distributed environment such as the blockchain, they could do it. They could take a phased approach to that and continue using their infrastructure and move part of the functionality to blockchain, and then monitor, for example, the execution of a financial instrument through the course of its life cycle, and use the blockchain as an immutable record of all of the transactions and that are part of the execution of a standard financial instrument, and then use it to build the expertise in smart contracts and blockchain, and eventually move more of their operations to that environment to gain all of the efficiencies and security guarantees that you get from smart contracts. Okay, then maybe to come back to the point of what are actually the differences between the Marlowe contracts and Plutus Foundation. So just to rehash on that. So Plutus is basically Plutus platform allows you to write Plutus applications in Haskell and then run them on Cardano as Plutus smart contracts. So it's a general purpose programming language that allows you then to tackle any application business domain. Whereas Marlowe is a domain-specific language that is tailored specifically for finance, and it's very simple and it has a fast learning curve as opposed to Plutus, which might require a little bit more time to get into. So Protists applications are, and the Plutus platform is aimed at application developers, while Marlowe contracts can also be designed and used by non-developers, so experts from financial services. Okay, so to recap everything we've talked about, and I'm sure you're also interested in when this functionality is going to be available to the developer community and to the end users, we've tried to put together a short and high-level timeline for that. So we will start with the multi-asset ledger, as mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. So look out for a testnet release of the multi-asset ledger fairly soon, within the next couple of months, and we will release it in phases to a more like invitation-only semi-private testnet, moving more towards the public testnet. And then later this year, maybe some early Q4, we would like to have the Plutus Foundation release to the Goguen testnet, which will then use to stabilize and improve this critical infrastructure in the testnet environment, which should then build up to the mainnet release of Goguen that would then include the Plutus Foundation and the multi-asset ledger sometime towards end of the year or early 2021. So if you can see in the lower part of the picture, there are advanced developer tools and SDK. So this is the Plutus application framework and the Marlowe tracks. So this is building on top of the Plutus Foundation and then providing all the infrastructure, frameworks, and developer tools that make it easier to develop and deploy applications in the Cardano network. And we, as mentioned, we will iterate rapidly and start to engage developers more intensively in this phase, starting with the alpha versions of the Plutus application framework and the Marlowe. We'll have short release cycles where we are planning 2 test releases before we go before releasing version 1.0 early next year. So what does that mean? What can you do at each of these phases? This is what I've tried to summarize in the next slide. So as I mentioned, it's already possible to do application development with the current status of the Cardano network with Shelley, and this is possible by using the Address-dia APIs, by using the multi-sig scripting language, and by using the metadata feature that comes with Shelley. So you can already build some applications for Cardano right now. The next step is then delivering this multi-asset ledger, which we called the project is called native tokens. So that will be available in the testnet shortly. So we will take the similar approach as we did with the Shelley testnet, and we will start first with selected pioneers, and then with a friends and family testnet, and then move to involve a wider Cardano community into the testnet phase following these initial rollout stages. Token Builder is the graphical user interface that allows you to build your own, to issue and distribute user-issued tokens on Cardano. So at that stage latest, it will be accessible to even less technical among the Cardano community. So once we have the Plutus Foundation on testnet, that adds then Plutus scripting functionality to Cardano, which allows you then to write Plutus applications. At this stage where we still have just the basic essential developer tools, we will work closely with some selected partners. From the wider community, we expect maybe that a few innovators that have some background in Haskell would be able to join and help us use that environment to write initial Plutus application and provide feedback on its usability and improvements that we could target in this testnet phase. Once we move to the mainnet with the Plutus Foundation, then we could start to extend our reach to more to a wider developer community. And once we start releasing initial more powerful developer tools and an underlying Plutus application framework with the first alpha release, then we will actually start thinking about organizing some developer events and providing more developer documentation, education material, or sort of developer onboarding material and tutorials that will make it much easier for everyone to get more deeply involved in developing applications for Cardano. And after that, we hope to have like a rapid release cycle of new features that make it easier and easier and more enjoyable for developers to develop these applications with us. Okay, so hope that gives you a good understanding of what we are planning to do and how you can actually engage with us and what you can expect in the coming months before the end of this year and early next year. So let me then just try to wrap up in the next couple of minutes by letting you know where you can find out more about all of the topics that we've covered here. So you can find out more about the Plutus. There will be another talk just following this one where Michael Payton-Jones and Jan Muller will go into the details of the Plutus platform, so some of the design choices and how it actually works. So if you are interested in getting involved in writing applications for that, this is the presentation for you to check out. We have some documentation already available, and remember, this is going to be recorded, so you will be able to go back and pause and check the links. So don't worry if they seem very long to memorize at this point. So I would encourage you also, if you plan to get involved with developing these applications, to check out the Plutus technical report, which is available online. Where can you find more about Marlowe? As I mentioned, there is a Marlowe playground, and there is a presentation around the Marlowe playground later this evening. And earlier there was a presentation which is still available as a recording, which goes into more detail about financial contracts on Cardano and also about the Actos standard that we've mentioned briefly in this presentation. And there are short instructional videos on YouTube made by Simon Thompson, which go into the details of financial contracts on blockchain and how you can use Marlowe to develop them, so which I encourage you to check out. We've also prepared a very short developer survey, which won't take you more than 2 minutes to complete. And we encourage any developers in the audience to go and do that. And this will also be a chance for you to get involved in the early stages of testnet and testing in the testnet environment for the multi-asset ledger, as well as for the Plutus Foundation. So if you want to get involved, or even if you don't, even if you just want to help us build a better platform for developers, please take a few minutes to participate in this survey. And you can also get in touch with us through on the Cardano forum. In the developer section of the forum, there are Plutus and DApps topics which we are also closely monitoring. So yeah, I would encourage you to do that as well. So thanks a lot. And yeah, we can move on to any questions.